Alrighty. Alright. So, yeah, very close to finishing the novel. But I want to go ahead and... How do you view on YouTube? Okay. I just want to share this on Twitter real quick. Come on. Stop. I don't want echo. I just want to... Dang it. Mute that video. There. Okay. Copy. Tonight's stream is starting. The final chapters of Resident Evil. The Umbrella Conspiracy. By S.D. Perry. Boom. Tweet. Gotta pin this real quick. Pinned. Alright. No. Hi, JC. Glad you made it. So, yep. This is gonna be, this is gonna get more exciting because there will be a tyrant that will be mentioned in this. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on reading now. Just I got what I wanted to do. Alright. 19. Jill stared in astonishment as Wesker suddenly stopped talking and crumpled to the floor, and Barry stepped into view, staring down at Wesker's body with a look of intense hatred, Colt in hand. She crouched down next to Wesker and pried the Beretta from his fingers, tucking it into her waistband. Barry turned to look at her, his eyes swimming with apology. Jill, I'm so sorry. I never should have believed him. Jill stared at him for a moment, thinking about his daughters. Moria and was Becky McGee's age. It's okay, she said finally. You came back. That's what matters. Barry handed her back her weapons, and they both gazed down at Wesker's sprawled form, still breathing, but unconscious. He was out cold. I don't suppose you have any handcuffs on you? Barry asked. Jill shook her head. Maybe we should check out the lab. There's bound to be some cable or cord we can use. Besides, I'm kind of curious about this miracle of modern science he was talking about. She turned and found the switch that operated the hydraulic door, noting the biohazard symbol painted across the front. The door slid open, and the two of them stepped inside. Wow. It was a huge, high-ceilinged chamber lined with monitoring consoles, cables snaking across the floor, and connecting to a whole series of standing glass tubes. There were 8 of the tubes lined up in the center of the room, each of them big enough to hold a grown man. They were all empty. Barry reached down and scooped up a handful of cable, digging into his pocket for a knife, while Jill walked toward the back, gazing at the technical and medical equipment, and stopped, staring, feeling her jaw drop. Against the back wall was a much larger tube, at least 8 or 9 feet tall, hooked up to its own computer console, and the thing inside filled it top to bottom. It was monstrous. Monstrous. Jill, I got the cable. Barry stopped next to her, his words faltering as he saw the abomination. Silently, they both walked toward it, unable to resist a closer look. It was tall, but proportionally correct, at least through the broad, muscular torso and long legs. Those parts appeared human. One of its arms had been altered into a cluster of massive dragging claws, hanging past its knees, while the other seemed ordinary, if overly large. There was a thick, bloody tumor protruding from where its heart would be, and Jill realized, staring at the bulbous mass, that it was the thing's heart. It was pulsing slowly, expanding and contracting in slow, rhythmic beats. She stopped in front of the tube, awed by the abomination. She could see lines of scar tissue snaking across its limbs, surgical scars. It had no sexual organs, they'd been cut away. She looked up at its face and saw that parts of the flesh there had also been removed. The lips were gone, and it seemed to grin broadly at her through the sliced red tissue of its face, all of its teeth exposed. Tyrant, Barry said quietly. Joe glanced over at him, saw him frowning down at the computer that was hooked to the tube by multiple cables. She looked back at the tyrant, feeling nearly overwhelmed by pity and disgust. Whatever it was now, it had once been a man. Umbrella had turned him into a freakish horror. We can't leave it like this, she said softly. Barry nodded. She joined him at the console, looking down at the myriad of switches and buttons. There had to be a switch that would put an end to its life. It deserved that much. There was a set of 6 red switches in a row along the bottom, and Barry flipped one of them down. Nothing seemed to happen. He glanced at her, and she nodded for him to continue. He used the side of his hand to flip all of them. Then there was a sudden dull thump. They both whirled around, saw the tyrant pull back its human hand and hit the glass again. Cracks webbed out from the impact. Through the glass had to be several inches thick. Oh, shit! Barry grabbed her arm as the creature drew its bleeding knuckles back for another blow. Run! They ran, Jill wishing to God that they'd left it alone, panic welling up from deep inside her. Barry slammed his hand down on the door control, and it slid open as behind them glass shattered. They stumbled through the door, terrified, Barry hitting the lock, and saw that Wesker was gone. That's cool. I'm glad. All right. Wesker stumbled toward the power room, his his head pounding, his limbs feeling strangely distant and weak. He felt like he was going to throw up. God damn Barry. They'd taken his gun. He'd come to as they walked into the lab and reeled toward the elevator, cursing them both, cursing Umbrella for creating such a screwed up mess, cursing himself for not simply killing the stars when he could have. It's not over. I'm still in control. This is my game. The sample case was down in the lab, probably being destroyed right now by one of those idiots. Tyrants, too. That magnificent creature, powerless without the adrenaline injections, dead. They'd shoot him in his sleeping heart. He'd die without ever tasting battle. Wesker reached the door to the room and leaned against it, struggling to catch his breath. Blood dribbled out of his ears as he shook his head, trying to clear it of the strange fog that had settled into his brain. He didn't have the tissue samples, but he could still complete his mission. It was important, very important, that he complete his mission. It was about control, and control was his game. Triggering system, watch out for monkeys. The MA2s. He had to be careful. Wesker opened the door and pitched forward, the ground seeming too far away and then too close. The machines were hissing at him, whining and hissing on the hot in the hot, oily air. His hand found the railing and he pulled himself toward the back of the room, trying to hurry but finding that his legs weren't interested. A claw shot down from above and tore into his scalp, yanking away a clump of hair. He felt warm liquid trickle down the back of his neck and stumbled on. The pain in his head sharper now. Took my gun, stupid, stupid assholes took my gun. He reached the door and had just managed to get it open when something heavy landed on his back, knocking him into the next room. He fell on the cold metal floor, and a terrible shriek sounded in his ear. Thick talons punctured the skin on his back, and Wesker slapped at it, at the grinning, screaming thing that was trying to kill him. He hit the creature as hard as he could, shoving the heel of his hand into its throat. It leaped away, landing on the mesh wall and clambering back up to the ceiling. Wesker pulled himself up and stumbled on, fresh waves of pain and nausea washing over him. The air was too hot, the turbines loud and relentless in their spinning, throbbing frenzy. But he could see the door to the back now, the door that led to the completion of his mission. All the stars dead, blown into orbit while I escape. Fly away, rich man. He flung the door open and made his way toward the small glowing green in the back corner. It was quieter here, cooler. The massive machines that filled the chamber hummed softly at him, their purpose quite different than that of the ones outside. These were the machines that wanted to help him regain his control. The noise from the open door behind him seemed far away as he reached the glowing screen, his fingers numb as they touched the keyboard beneath. He found the keys he needed, the code spilling out across the monitor in soft green after only a few mistakes. A sexy, quiet voice informed him that the countdown would begin in 30 seconds. Dizzy, he tried to remember the setting for the timer. The system would trigger automatically in 5 minutes, but he had to reset it, give himself time to get reoriented, and make his way to the outside. Behind him, something screamed. Wesker whirled around, confused, and saw four of the mesh monkeys running at him, lashing out with their long, curved hands as they reached him. Terrible pain shot up through his legs and he fell, crashing to the steel floor. This can't happen. One of the creatures jumped onto his chest, and suddenly Wesker couldn't breathe, couldn't even raise his weak arms to push it away. Another tore into his left leg, ripping away a thick chunk of flesh with its hooked claw. The third and fourth screamed in savage glee, dancing around him like dark, vicious children, lifting their claws as they pranced on squat legs. Somehow there was blood in his eyes, and the world was spinning away, screams and hisses and incredible, searing heat blurring his vision, his mind. Tyrant has come. Wesker could feel it, could feel the presence of something vast and powerful touching him. Grinning through the pain, he searched for it through the red haze of his failing vision, wanting more than anything to see it slaughter his attackers in the glory of perfect motion. But he could only make out the immense shadow that seemed to flood over him, through him. Could only imagine that the powerful, magnificent warrior was reaching down to lift him from his torment. I control, let me see. Darkness stole his hopes away, and Wesker thought no more. Stars Alpha Team, Bravo, anybody. If you can't answer, try to signal. I'm spinning out of I'm running out of fuel. Do you read? This is Brad. Repeat. Stars Alpha Team. Rebecca hit the button, talking fast. Brad, there's a heliport at the Spencer estate. You have to get to the heliport. Brad, come in. There was a high, whining squeal, and Rebecca heard what must have been the word copy, but the rest was lost. I copy, or do you copy? There was no way to know. Frustrated and worried, Rebecca held onto the radio tightly, hoping that he'd heard her. Suddenly, a shrill alarm blared into the silent room through some hidden speaker in the ceiling. Rebecca jumped, staring around the cold chamber helplessly. There was a buzzing click from inside the door that led to the heliport, and she hurried over, grabbing the handle and pulling it open. It had unlocked. A cool female voice began to speak, slowly and clearly over the jangling alarm. The triggering system has now been activated. All personnel must evacuate immediately or process deactivation. You have 5 minutes. The triggering system has now been activated. As the recorded message repeated, Rebecca in the open doorway Rebecca stood in the open doorway and watched the open ladder shaft, her blood racing, waiting to see Chris emerge from the levels below. He'd only been gone a few minutes, but their time had just run out. Chapter 20. Jill and Barry ran from the elevator back toward the main hall of B3, the cool voice informing them that they had 4.5 minutes. They hit the open corridor at a dead run, sprinting around the corner, and saw Chris Redfield halfway up the metal stairs. Chris! Jill shouted. He spun around, his face lighting up as he saw them dashing toward him. Hurry! He shouted. There's a heliport on B1. Thank God! Chris waited until they reached the base of the stairs and ran ahead, rushing around the walkway and holding open the door that led to the ladder. Jill and Barry made it to the top and sped through, the computer telling them that they had 4 minutes, 15 seconds to get away. Barry went up the ladder first and Jill followed, Chris right behind. They piled out into B1. Jill saw that Rebecca Chambers was standing at the emergency exit, her youthful face tight with anxiety. Chris hustled through the door, and the four of them ran through a winding concrete hall, Jill praying silently that they'd have time to clear the estate. I hope you burn here, Wesker. There was a large elevator at the end of the corridor, and Barry slammed the gate open, holding it as they rushed inside. He jumped in after them. They had 4 minutes even. The elevator seemed to crawl upward, and Jill looked at her watch, heart pounding as the seconds ticked past. Not gonna make it. We'll never make it. The lift hummed to a stop, and Chris yanked the gate open, the cool air of early morning sweeping over them, and the sweet, wondrous sound of a helicopter overhead circling. He heard me! Rebecca shouted, and Jill grinned, feeling a sudden wave of affection for the rookie. The helicopter port was huge, the white, flat space surrounded by high walls, a circle of yellow paint on the asphalt showing Brad where to set down. Barry and Chris waved their arms frantically, signaling the pirate to hurry as Jill looked at her watch again. A little over 3.5 minutes remained, more than enough time. Crash! Jill whirled around, saw chunks of concrete and tar fly into the air and rain down over the northwest corner of the landing pad. A giant claw stretched up from the hole, fell across the jagged lip, and the pale, hulking tyrant leaped out onto the heliport, rose smoothly from its agile crouch, and started toward them. What the hell is that? It had to be 8 feet tall, parts of its giant body mutilated and deformed, its grinning face focusing on them even as it stood up. It moved toward them at a slow walk, the massive claw of its left arm flexing. No time. Brad can't land. Chris targeted the dark tumorous thing on its chest and fired, pulling the trigger 5 times in rapid succession, 3 of the rounds finding their mark. The other 2 were within an inch of the pulsing redness, and the creature didn't even slow down. Scatter! Barry yelled. The stars split, Jill pulling Rebecca to the farthest corner from the towering monster, Chris sprinting toward the southern wall. Barry stood his ground, pointing his Colt at the approaching beast. 3.357 rounds slammed into its belly, the thundering shots echoing against the high concrete walls. The creature suddenly sped up, running toward Barry, drawing its giant claw back, and Barry dove out of the way. The thing swept past him in a running crouch, bringing its claw up as if throwing a ball underhand. Its talons gouged the asphalt, ripping through it as though it was no more solid than water. As soon as the monster was past, it stopped running, turning almost casually back to watch Barry scramble to his feet and fire again. The bullet took out a fleshy chunk of its right shoulder. Thick blood coursed down its wide chest and joined the dripping open mass of its stomach. Overhead, the Alpha copter still circled, unable to land, and there was still no sign that the immense creature felt the injuries. It started its run again, dropping its terrible, inhuman hand down as it went for Barry, just as his revolver clicked on empty. Barry sprinted away, but the charging monster veered with him, and its sweeping claw glanced against his side, tumbling to the ground. Barry! Chris raced toward the creature, firing into its back as it bent down over the fallen Alpha. Barry was scrambling backwards, his chest shredded, his eyes wide with terror, and it must have felt the stinging of the bullets because it turned, fixing its emotionless stare on Chris. Barry staggered to his feet and limped quickly away. We don't have any time. Chris emptied the clip, and the last several rounds hitting it in the face. Pieces of tooth flew from the creature's lipless mouth, spattering to the asphalt in a white in a rain of white and red. The creature didn't seem to notice as it started to run toward him at incredible speed. Jill and Rebecca were both firing, shouting, trying to turn its attention away from Chris, but it was already fixated, pounding toward him and drawing its claw back. Wait for it. He dove to the side as at the last possible second, and the monster went flying past, its claw mulching the asphalt where he'd just been standing. Chris ran, the horrible awareness dawning on him that the seconds were slipping past and that they couldn't kill it in time. Barry felt blood seeping from his thigh, the top several layers of his skin sliced neatly away by the tyrant's brutal swipe. The pain was bearable. The knowledge that they were going to die wasn't. We'll blow up if we don't get chopped to pieces first. Tyrant turned its attention to Jill and Rebecca, both of them firing again at the seemingly invulnerable monster. It started its smooth, easy walk toward them, still indifferent to the bloody holes on its body. Shotgun blasts hit it in the legs and chest. 9 millimeter bullets speckled its pasty flesh. It didn't falter, kept on walking. Wind whipped down over Barry as the roar of the helicopter's blades suddenly got louder. He heard a screaming shout come from above. Incoming! Barry stared up at the copter, hovering only 20 feet from the ground, and saw a heavy black object fly out of the open door on the side, hitting the tar with an audible thud. Chris was closest. He ran for it. The tyrant had almost reached Jill and Rebecca. The two of them split, each headed a different direction, and the creature turned toward Jill without hesitating, tracking her with its strange, fixed gaze. Jill, this way! Chris screamed. Barry spun and saw that Chris had the bulky rocket launcher propped on his shoulder. Yes! Jill veered toward Chris, the tyrant close behind. Clear! She leaped to one side and rolled as Chris fired. The whoosh of the rocket's propelled grenade, almost lost to the thundering beat of the copter's rotors. The explosion wasn't. The grenade hit the tyrant square in the chest, and in a burst of incendiary light and deafening sound, it blew the monster into a million smoking pieces. Even as tattered shreds of flesh and bone hailed down over them, Brad lowered the copter back toward the ground, and the four stars ran for it. The rails hadn't touched yet as Jill dove into the open cabin, Chris and Rebecca and Barry all throwing themselves in after her. Go, Brad, now! Jill screamed. The bird lifted into the air and sped away. Chapter 21. The calm female voice fell only on inhuman ears. You have 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. System activation now. A circuit that ran the length and width of the estate connected. With an earth-shaking thunderclap of motion and sound, the Spencer estate exploded. Devices went off simultaneously in the basement of the mansion, beneath the reservoir, behind a plain, uninteresting fireplace, in the guardhouse, and in the third level of the basement laboratories. Marble walls tumbled down over the disintegrating floors of the fine old mansion. Rock collapsed, and concrete blew into a fine blackened dust. Massive fireballs rose up into the early morning sky and could be seen from miles away in their few brief seconds of brilliant life. As the incredible peal of booming sound rolled across the forest and died away, the wreckage started to burn. Man, what is it with the Resident Evil final bosses and their weakness to rocket launchers? Yeah, it's become a Resident Evil tradition, hasn't it? All right, the last chapter, epilogue. The four of them were quiet as Brad piloted the copter toward the sky, and though he had a million questions, something about their silence didn't invite conversation. Chris and Jill were both staring out at the hatch window and at the spreading fire that had been the estate, their expressions grim. Barry was slumped against the cabin wall, looking down at his hands like he'd never seen them before. The new girl was quietly moving among them, treating their wounds without saying a word. Brad kept his mouth shut, still feeling crappy about taking off earlier. He'd been through hell since then, flying around in circles and watching the fuel gauge slowly drop. It had been a total nightmare, and he had to take a piss like nobody's business. And then that monster. He shuddered. Whatever it had been, he was glad it was dead. It had taken all of his nerve not to fly away the second he'd laid eyes on it, and as far as he was concerned, he deserved a little consideration for managing to kick the launcher out the door. He glanced back at the silent foursome, wondering if he should tell them about the weird call he'd gotten over the radio. Right after the rookie had screamed something about a heliport through the static, a clear, solid signal had come in, a male voice calmly giving him the exact coordinates. The guy had been listening in, which was weird, but the fact that he knew the location well enough to give Brad directions was downright spooky. He frowned, trying to remember the mystery man's name. Thad? Terrence? Trent. That's it. He said his name was Trent. Brad decided that it would keep for another day. For now, he just wanted to go home. All right. True, but yeah, William Barkin. Yeah. Uh huh. All right. There is a preview past. I guess I could read about the author. It's one little paragraph here, but then I'll read the preview of the next book after it. So, about the author. S.D. Stephanie Danielle Perry writes multimedia novelizations in the fantasy science fiction or horror realm for love and money, including several alien novels. eh, Yeah, aliens novels, the novelization of Time Cop, and the soon to be released movie thriller Virus. Under the name Stella Howard, she's written an original novel based upon the television series Xena, Warrior Princess. The Resident Evil books mark her first foray into based upon video games. She lives in Portland, Oregon, with her husband and a multitude of pets. Hold on a sec. Check some. Hold on a second. Koi Monster messaged me about something. Okay, let's see what's going on. I got. Alright, oh. Koi Monster got ripped off at a computer store. Ugh, that really stinks. Message her a bit later. Still the preview to read. Okay, in my best announcer voice. The fight against Umbrella continues in Resident Evil Caliban Cove, the first all-original Resident Evil novel by S.D. Perry. Available now. You must be Rebecca Chambers, he said. He had a British accent, his words clipped and somehow polished. You're the biochemist, is that right? Rebecca nodded. Working on it. And you are? He smiled wider, shaking his head. Forgive my manners, please. I hadn't expected. That is, I. He stepped around Barry's low coffee table and extended his hand, flushing slightly. I'm David Trapp, with the Stars Exeter branch in Maine, he said. Rebecca felt cool relief wash over her. The Stars had sent help instead of calling. Fine by her. She shook his hand, stifling a grin, knowing that her appearance had thrown him. Nobody expected an 18-year-old scientist, and she'd gotten used to the surprised looks. Yeah, and while she got used to the surprised looks, she still took a kind of mischievous pleasure at catching people off guard. So, are you like the scout or something? She asked. Mr. Trapp frowned. Sorry? For the investigation. Are there other teams already here, or did you come to check things out first, get the dirt on Umbrella? She trailed off as he shook his head slowly, almost sadly, his dark eyes glittering with an emotion she couldn't read. It came out in his voice, heavy with frustrated anger, as the words sank in, Rebecca felt her knees go watery with a sudden anxious dread. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, Miss Chambers. I have reason to believe that Umbrella has gotten to key members of the Stars, either by bribery or blackmail. There is no investigation, and no one else is coming. A look of confused terror passed through the girl's light brown eyes, and just as quickly was gone. She took a deep breath and blew it out. Are you sure? I mean, did Umbrella try to get to you, or are you positive? David shook his head. I'm not absolutely certain, no, but I wouldn't be here if I wasn't concerned about it. It was a bit of an understatement, but David still wasn't past the shock of seeing how young she was, and felt an almost instinctive desire not to alarm her any further. Barry had mentioned that she was something of a child genius, but he hadn't really expected a child. The biochemist wore high tops and cut off denim shorts rolled at the knee, topped by a shapeless black t shirt. Get past it. This child may be the only scientist we have left. The thought rekindled the anger that had been burning in David's gut for the past few days. The story that had been unfolding since Barry's call wasn't a pretty one, filled with treachery and lies, and the fact that the stars, his stars, were involved. Barry walked into the room with a glass of water, and Rebecca took it from him gratefully, swallowing half of it in one gulp. Barry shot him a glance, and then turned his attention to Rebecca. He told you, huh? The girl nodded. "Do Jill and Chris know?" "Not yet. That's why I called," Barry said. "Look, no point in going through this twice. We should wait for them to show up before we get into specifics." "Agreed," David said. He generally found that first impressions were the most telling, and if they were going to be working together, he wanted to get a feel for the girl's character. The three of them sat, and Barry started to tell Rebecca how he and David had met back in Stars training when they were both much younger men. Barry told a great story, even if it was only to kill time. David listened with half an ear as Barry related an anecdote about their graduation night involving a rather humorless drill sergeant, and several rubber snakes. The girl was relaxing, even enjoying the story of their childish prank. 17 years ago, she would have been celebrating her first birthday. Still, she had her questions on hold at Barry's request, and even though David knew she had to be anxious about what he'd told her, the ability to retrain one's focus so quickly was an admirable trait, one that he'd never fully mastered. He'd been able to think of little else since his own call to the Stars AD. Yeah. David's devotion to the organization had made the apartment betrayal all the more bitter, like a bad taste in his mouth that wouldn't go away. The Stars had been David's life for almost 20 years, had given him all things he'd lacked growing up, a sense of self worth, a sense of purpose and integrity. Just like that, the lives of dedicated men and women, my life, and life's work simply tossed aside as if it meant nothing. How much did that cost? How much did Umbrella have to pay to buy the star's honor? David shook the anger, focusing his attention on Rebecca. If all he'd learned was true, time was short, and their resources were now severely limited. His motivations weren't as important right now as hers. He could tell by the way she held herself that she wasn't the shy and or submissive type, and she was obviously bright. Her eyes fairly sparkled with it. From what Barry had told him, she'd acted professionally throughout the Spencer facility operation. Her file suggested that she was more than qualified to work with a chemical virus, assuming she was as good as the reports said, and assuming she has any desire to put her life in further danger. That was going to be the sticking point. She hadn't been with the Stars for very long, and knowing that they'd sold their people out probably wasn't going to overwhelm her with feelings of confidence for the job ahead. It would be just as easy for her to step out of the game now. For that matter, it would be the intelligent choice for all of them. There was a knock at the door, presumably the other two alphas. David's hand drifted down to the butt of his 9 millimeter as Barry went to answer. When he walked back in, leading the Stars team members, David relaxed, then stood up to be formally introduced. Jill Valentine, Chris Redfield, this is Captain David Trapp, military strategist for the main military strategist for the main Stars Exeter branch. Chris was the marksman, if David remembered correctly, and Jill was something of a covert B&E specialist. Barry said that the pilot, Brad Vickers, had skipped town shortly after the Spencer incident. No great loss, from what he could gather. The man sounded distinctly unreliable. He shook hands with both of them, and they all sat down. Barry nodded, nodding toward him. David's an old comrade of mine. We worked together on the same team for about 2 years, right after boot camp. He showed up on my doorstep about an hour ago with news, and I didn't think it could wait. David, David cleared his throat, trying to focus on the significant facts. After a pause, he began at the beginning. As you already know, 6 days ago, Barry placed several calls to various Stars branches to see if any word had come from the Home Office about the tragedy that occurred here. I received one of those calls. It was the first I'd heard about it, and I have since found that the New York office hasn't contacted anyone about your discovery. No warnings or memos. Nothing has been issued to the Stars regarding the Umbrella Corporation. Chris and Jill exchanged looks of concern. Maybe they're not maybe they're not done investigating, Chris said slowly. David shook his head. I spoke to the assistant director myself the day after Barry called. I didn't tell him about the contact, only that I'd heard rumor of a problem in Raccoon and wanted to know if it had any merit. He looked at the assembled group and sighed inwardly, feeling like he'd already gone it over 1,000 times, only in my mind, searching for another answer, and there isn't one. The AD wouldn't tell me anything outright, he continued, and he told me that I should remain quiet about it until official word came down. What he would say was that there had been a helicopter crash in Raccoon City, and what he implied was that the surviving Stars were trying to lay blame on Umbrella, angry over some funding dispute. But that's not true, Jill said. We were investigating the murders and found. Yes, Barry told me, David interrupted. We found that the murders were the result of a laboratory accident. The T virus that Umbrella was experimenting with was released somehow, and it transformed the researchers into mad killers. That's exactly what happened, Chris said. I know it sounds nuts, but we were there. We saw them. David nodded. I believe you. I have to admit, I was skeptical after speaking with Barry. As you say, it sounds nuts. But my call to New York and what's happened since has changed all that. I've known Barry for a long time, and I knew that he wouldn't be looking to place blame for such an unfortunate incident unless Umbrella was, in fact, responsible. He even told me about his own unwilling involvement in the attempted cover up. But if Tom Kurtz told you that there was no conspiracy, Chris said. David sighed. Yes, we have to assume that either our own organization has been misled, or that, like your Captain Wesker, members of the Stars are now working for Umbrella. There was a moment of shocked silence as they absorbed the information, and David could see the anger and confusion play across their faces. He knew how they felt. It meant that the Stars directors had either been manipulated by Umbrella or corrupted by them. And either way, the survivors of the Raccoon team had been hung out to dry, left vulnerable to whatever Umbrella might do. David glanced around the room, trying to assess their readiness for the rest of it. Barry's fists were clenched, and he stared at them as if he'd never seen them before. Jill and Rebecca both seemed lost in thought, though he could see that they had accepted his story as truth. It would save them time, at least. Chris stood up and started to pace, his youthful features flushed with anger. So, basically, we've got no credibility with the locals, no backup coming, and we've been branded as liars by our own people. The Umbrella investigation is dead, and we're screwed. Does that pretty much sum it up? David could see that the anger wasn't directed at him, just as the anger that he felt wasn't for the young Alpha. Thought of what Umbrella had done, what the Stars were involved in. It made him sick with rage, with feelings of helplessness that he hadn't felt since his childhood. Stop thinking of yourself. Tell them the rest. David stood up and looked at Chris, though he addressed all of them. He hadn't even had time to tell Barry yet. Actually, there's more. It seems that there's another Umbrella facility on the main coast conducting experiments with this virus of theirs, and just like what happened here, they've lost control. David turned to Rebecca, taking her wide, horrified gaze as he finished. I'm taking a team in stars or authoriz- without stars authorization, and I want you to come with us. So, yeah, JC says, a shame that after RE1, Rebecca only appears in RE2 in the form of a lewd picture on Wesker's desk, and RE0 then disappears from the franchise after that. Well, in the books, she is given more role. She does uh, exist more within these novels here. So anyway, that's the preview of the one that came out after the Umbrella Conspiracy. And I was thinking that I could either read that for next October of next year or um, Resident Evil Zero, which is like the prologue of the, based on the game Resident Evil Zero. So, JC, which one are you more interested in? The original novel by S.D. Perry, Caliban Cove, I read the preview of, or her Resident Evil Zero novel? Both are pretty good. And David is just one of her original characters. There's also three more from this the Exeter Stars branch from Maine. Okay, all right, Caliban Cove for next year then. In fact, since there's still since it's still early on in the stream, I could read the summary of it. Why not? Into the bag with the others. Out. Caliban Cove. Caliban. Here we go. Caliban Cove. The first all original novel based on the best selling video game series. Resident Evil Caliban Cove. They knew it wasn't over. In the aftermath of their ordeal through the Umbrella Corporation's genetic research facility, the surviving members of the Special Tactics and Rescue Squad stars attempt to warn the world about the conspiracy to create terrifying biological weapons. But the conspiracy is far from dead, as the stars learn when they are declared outlaws by the very people who trained them. Forced to go underground, the stars resolve to battle the conspiracy on their own, determined to seek out and stop Umbrella's experiments wherever they may be. Combat medic and biochemist Rebecca Chambers, the sole survivor of the Bravo team, joins a new Stars strike force when the rumor comes of another Umbrella experiment. Hidden beneath the rocky cliffs of Caliban Cove, Maine, someone is building an army of the undead. Within a sinister lighthouse, through a complex maze of sea caves, inside the shell of a sunken shipwreck, the stars must battle more unspeakable horrors and stop a madman from unleashing the biohazard upon the world. But the stars may never get the chance, as the aggressive DNA altering virus Umbrella has engineered to create its living weapons begins to infect one of them. Well, there are a few. Let's see. There's this one. I think there's book 4 that's not directly based on the games. Um, 5 is based on the game with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. And number 6, I think is, yeah, number 6 is based on the game Code Veronica. I think it's 2 and 4. They're the original novels. Yeah, and as I said, through the novels, there is like a sort of alternate universe timeline going on. Yeah, it's sort of it's very interesting. I like it. It's very good. Yeah, it's taken into an interesting and very good direction for these novels. So, you know what? I'll just set this book up where I put the Umbrella Conspiracy. That way it'll be there until I'm ready to read it next October of next year. Okie dokie. All right. Okay. Any questions, comments, predictions about Caliban Cove that I'll read next year? Oh yeah. Yep, definitely and pretty interesting. Um I know there's one Stars member. I forget his name, but he's part of with the Exeter Stars branch of Maine, and the dude's funny. Yeah, I like him, and I also like the character David Trapp. And there's 2 more in the main stars branch. I won't say much more. I won't really spoil it for the novel, but yeah, there's about 4 of those. Yeah. These 4 original characters. Oh yeah, and the bad guy. There's a original bad guy too, this madman. And let's see here. Still not quite 2 hours yet. There is, I guess I could share some funny stuff. Like, I know there's this person who does these instrumentals using the voice acting audio from some of the later Resident Evil games, Resident Evil 5 and 6, known as Six Shadow. Yep. So I actually saved 3 of them on my hard drive in MP3 form. I will play one of the Resident Evil 5 ones. Okay. I have to switch it. Switch. Make the switch. Okay. Well, let me know if you, in the live chat, if you can hear it, JC. I want to play this thing. I'll just screen share. Yeah. Share audio, I guess. Entire screen share. Got it. All right. Hide. Go to music. Nope, wrong one. Right here. Here we go. This is funny. Come on, load.
Let me clarify something for you.
No!
I don't think of myself as a king. I think of myself as a Chris!
Thanks.
I don't think of myself as a god. I think of myself as a Chris!
Thanks.
I don't think of myself as a planet.
What?
I think of myself as a Chris!
With superior DNA will be chosen. It's never occurred to Let's go! What's done? Will be allowed to carry that. Will be chosen. Thanks.
Oh, come on. Yeah. There's two more. One more Resident Evil 5 one by Six Shadow. Crap, stop that. No. Like, freaking press the wrong freaking button. Yeah. I don't think Six Shadow is copyrighted exactly. Yeah, it's not like he's making any money off of this or whatever, but yeah, YouTube still does stupid stuff. Like, bleh. And there's one more. This one, Barry Braden. No. Okay, Sika Shadow. You could find his account on SoundCloud, and I think it's Six Shadow SIK Shadow. I'm gonna have to look on YouTube to find that channel again. Get it right, but here's the next one. This one. Play.
Chris. What is this? Sorry, I got this. Chris.
I can't right now.
No, Chris.
I'd rather not.
Chris.
Out of the question.
I have. Chris.
Okay.
Go.
Give me your machine gun.
No.
God damn it.
Go.
Give me your handgun.
No.
Shit.
Go.
Give me your shotgun.
No.
God damn it.
Go.
Give me your magnum.
No.
Shit.
Go.
Give me your rifle.
No.
God damn it.
Go.
Give me your rocket launcher.
No.
Shit.
Go.
Give me an egg.
Take it.
Nice. Wait. I've got all I can hold.
What?
I can't hold anymore. You hang on to it.
No.
God damn it. Come on.
No.
Shit. Nice.
No.
God damn it. Come on.
No.
Shit. Wait. He's actually serious about destroying the entire...
No.
God damn it. Come on.
No.
Shit. Nice.
No.
God damn it. Come on.
No.
Shit. Nice work. You okay?
No.
the third final seed onto okay.
I have to face the truth. Accept responsibility. That's the only way I'll ever remember. The only way I'll get my life back.
Keep this bridge secure until Finn gets back. Let him come as close as he can before you blow the charges. Keep this bridge secure until Finn gets back. Let him come as close as he can before you blow the charges. Southbreak and China make city pale in comparison. We need a vaccine for the C virus now. Southbreak and China make city pale in comparison. We need a vaccine for the C virus now. Keep this bridge secure until Finn gets back. Let him come as close as he can before you blow the charges. Keep this bridge secure until Finn gets back. Let him come as close as he can before you blow the charges. Southbreak and China make city pale in comparison. We need a vaccine for the C virus now. Southbreak and China make city pale in comparison. We need a vaccine for the C virus now.
I have to face the truth. Accept responsibility. That's the only way I'll ever remember. The only way I'll get my life back.
7! How many levers does it take to fly this thing? 70,000! I'll just spend some quality time with our friend. 7! As long as he's airborne, we're not going anywhere in that. 7! You're finally gonna get what's coming to you. 7! Forget about me! Just shoot 7! I've got you now. 7! Forget about me! Just shoot 7! I've got you now. 7! Forget about me! Just shoot 7! I've got you now. 7! Forget about me! Just shoot 7! I've got you now.
What about the glove compartment?
Question! Where the hell is that backup?
Who? Checking a car isn't as easy as it looks.
I lost all my men because of here! I lost over 70,000 people because of Shannon! Forget about me!
Good stuff.
Just shoot Shannon!
Oh yeah.
I've got you now. Shannon! Forget about me!
Good stuff.
Just shoot Shannon!
Oh yeah.
I've got you now. Shannon! Forget about me!
Good stuff.
Just shoot Shannon!
Oh yeah.
I've got you now. Shannon! Forget about me!
Good stuff.
Just shoot Shannon!
Oh yeah.
I've got you now.
And that's it. Shit. You were listening to few spoof songs of taking instrumentals, taking voice acting audio and stuff, game audio from a couple of Resident Evil games, 5 and 6, by Seek a Shadow on SoundCloud. I thought of just sharing those after finishing up on reading the novel. Now to find that the YouTube channel, I'm gonna put it in the live chat. That way so you can like check it out, check this person's stuff out whenever. I don't think of myself as a god. I think of myself as a Chris. I don't think. Thanks. Six Shadow. Here we go. Here we go. Sixth Shadow. Yep, so check that person whenever. Hey, Hey, YouTube and Jaguar, you totally missed the very ending of the book earlier, so you're gonna have to catch up. um, but yeah, it's good to see you, Jaguar. Uh, I think there's different ones from the same person. Let's go. I subscribed to this person some years back. Uh, the Josh Stone one. Legend, a legend. Give me a machine gun. Hooray! Hooray! What else? There's this one, the RE6, featuring characters Helena Harper and Leon Kennedy, from Resident Evil 6, called Dynamite. Shoot that dynamite! Shoot that dynamite! What the hell? What the hell? You're gonna have to hear those for yourselves. Yeah, at least you're not alone in the chat. um, I guess I'll sort of summarize what. Oh, nah, I'm not gonna summarize it. But oh yeah, after reading the end of that story, the Umbrella Conspiracy, towards the back of the book was the preview for Caliban Cove, and JC's interested for next year in hearing the book that takes place. It's a original novel by S.T. Perry that takes place in between Resident Evil 1 and Resident Evil 2. Yeah, it's a pretty good novel, and it's got some very good original characters. I liked David and one other of the Stars Exeter branch of Maine. Poor Todd. I confused him. Yeah, that was fun. I found, yeah, I was like, I found Suka Shadow stuff. I was just looking around on SoundCloud for Resident Evil stuff, like original, like remixes of Resident Evil music or something like that. And I found that. I found the RE5 ones, the Chris one, and the Barry Burton no. Okay, Todd, later. um let's see what else. Um I guess like an unrelated note that's not Resident Evil stuff. I have found someone really cool that followed my account on Twitter earlier today. Uh he's on Steam and Twitter, known as, hold on. Um Anarchy Softworks. Yeah, Anarchy Softworks. He's an ANCAP indie game developer. He's his own. He's an all one guy crew, and he has 2 games listed on Steam right now, called Suffer and Cyborg Ninja versus the Third Reich. I bought Cyborg Ninja versus the Third Reich since it was like about $1.99. So I got that. I figured, why not? I'll buy that one and try it out later. It does look kind of fun. Suffer is an interesting looking FPS shooter, and according to according to the game description, hold on, bringing it up again. Suffer is a brutally difficult, retro-styled first-person shooter. Become the spirit of anarchy and take on the police state in this horror punk twist on classic PC gaming. Yeah, so I was thinking, in hopes to do more to revive my gaming channel. I do have a gaming channel, but I've barely put anything on it. So, I was thinking that I could do a sort of a let's play stuff on, Suffer is $9.99, and the one, let's see, the other one is a 2D platformer thing, in which you kick some Nazi ass as like a ninja type character. Yeah, so Anarchy Softworks on Steam. Check him out. He also has a website. I will put that in the chat. It's a cool looking website. That's probably not. I'll just open it. There we go. Copy. anarchysoftworks.com. So, there are 3 complete games, 2 on Steam and 1 free one on itch.io. It's called Wrong Color Blocks Must Die. And his description on his website reads, vintage arcade shoot 'em up game with random waves of enemies to destroy, happy and colorful with chillaxing chiptune music. Wrong Color Blocks Must Die is a fun time killer. Play for free on itch.io or on newgrounds.com. And Cyborg Ninja versus the Third Reich. Well, I downloaded this one that I plan to try out and showcase. I'm going to try out via while I record it. Yeah, I'm going to go in blind. I'll record my gameplay of it and my voiceover over it, and I will put it on my gaming channel. Yeah, that ought to be interesting. Yep, and you could all share the experience with me as I played this game for the first time without any prior experience. Yeah, that would be an interesting. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, so check this guy out. I'm glad he found me on Twitter. I'm interested in featuring him on as a guest in a stream of mine in the not too distant future. Sometime I'll have to ask if when he's available, and just chat with him, bring him on and chat with him. I definitely want to know more about this person, and how like how he does what he does, his inspirations. Oh yeah, and on his website, as like a little hint on what his next project is, it's a work in progress, a roguelike RPG. It's a homage to brutally difficult 80s RPGs, secret dungeons, fierce monsters, and of course the loot that comes along with them, untitled and in early stages of development. Yeah, I'm interested in this game. According to the animated GIF, it certainly looks interesting. Yeah, I think I'm would want to try out this game as soon as it comes out. Maybe in early access. Yeah. If you notice other YouTube band caps like SO or 2 cents. I don't know. Maybe not. I know he's familiar with other anarchists on Twitter. Got a notification on Twitter. What's up? Oh, he shares my tweet. This person shares my tweet about cockroaches bringing a suicidal man to get help and then beat the crap out of him. And this is in a hospital room. Yeah. I shared it and said it's fucked up. It is very fucked up. News. I mentioned Anarchy Softworks. I mentioned this person to Nate the Voluntarist. I wonder if Nate would be interested in also having him on his show. Because lately I know Nate's been getting some really interesting guests on his show. Like, I mean, David Friedman and Walter Block, Michael Edelstein, my friend Kyle from Blooded the Brave. Yeah, so maybe Nate would like to have the Indie Gamer on his show as well, on his streams, one of his streams as well as on mine. Yeah, I'm very interested in talking with this person. Yeah, and getting my gamer geek on alongside him. I'm a fan. I'm also a fan of some retro games myself. Not long ago, not at all long ago, I did get this N64 emulator, and I got some of my favorite games, this Nintendo 64 games, on ROM. I'm glad I did, since the memory card thing for the actual physical Nintendo 64 that I have, it doesn't work anymore. So I can play my Nintendo 64 games with that require a memory card on the computer and save them that way. So I started again on Gex 3, started again on Rayman 2, and I found some Nintendo 64 games that I never owned, but I rented before, and I liked those. Such as Paper Mario, and there was another one, I forget. I know Paper Mario I definitely played, but I don't know if I finished it. Oh yeah, and the Earthworm Jim 3D, which I have a physical copy of, that saves with the memory controller pack, as well as the Space Invaders one. I can now play those on PC, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, so I actually took did a little recording of gameplay from one of these games, so I'll put that on my gaming channel as well. And well, and probably for my gaming channel, I'll probably do some other gameplays. Various games that I got. I play on PC. I got quite a lot of them. About 30 on Steam, and there's some Nintendo 64 ROMs, one Nintendo DS ROM. I wanted to try out the Kirby Superstar Ultra since I've enjoyed the Super Nintendo version. Heck, I'll just get the emulator Super Nintendo and get a ROM version of the original Kirby Superstar. Because why not? Dang, I'm running out of things to say now, so guess I might as well end the stream now. Thank you to JC, thank you to YouTubing Jaguar, and poor Todd. Came in while I was playing those funny RE songs, Resident Evil songs. Oh gosh. Anyways, good night everyone. Thank you for tuning in with me. Not well, I think in 2 weeks on Monday night I'll do the more regular streaming, get back to that since I'm done with the Resident Evil novel, The Umbrella Conspiracy. And that was fun. I liked that. I definitely would like to do that again for next October of next year. Anyways, good night.